Basketball Show. And again, we're having guest after guest, great people coming on board to be a part of the show. No Greg Hire, no Ben Mallis here, but Paul Smith, owner of the Sydney Kings, is here. And look, they said it couldn't happen because, I'm from Perth and I didn't think Paul would want to speak to someone from Perth, but he's given up some time. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
No worries, Dan. It's good to be here, mate.
Now, if you do want to find us on Instagram, it's BackChat_basketball, and you can send us an email, hello@backchatpodcast.com.au. If you send me anything, we'll probably read it out because I'm like that, and we like to have lots of questions, and that's how people get in touch with us. Let's chat NBA news in a sec, but first, before we do that, I want to hear about your greatest sporting achievement, Paul. Now, usually I speak to basketballers, so I tell them they're not allowed to tell me anything about basketball because that's sort of cheating. So for you, I'm going to give you open slather. So your greatest sporting achievement, and look, I'll say this, you can't say winning a championship with the Kings. Okay, so
no. Well, that caveat on it. That's a great moment, but it's not a great sporting achievement for me.
No. All right. So tell us, what's yours?
Look, it's pretty much nothing special really. Probably, playing representative rugby here in New South Wales was probably up there. Winning an under-9 rugby league grand final was a great thing. Those little things that matter. We went a whole season undefeated in the Group 7 Warilla Gorillas.
Nice.
There's a moment there, and it's not a glorious thing. Shooting a low number in golf was good. All that sort of stuff. But I've never achieved anything outstanding in sport. Winning nothing like winning an NBL championship. That's for sure.
Well, look, I'm all for the lower, the younger things that stick with you. I'm just gonna. Is it here? It is actually. Just bear with me a sec. I'll show you this. This is This is my cricketing trophy. I was under 12s, and I bowled 5 for 16 in the grand final, and that's the ball from the actual game. So that's my greatest sporting achievement. There's nothing bad about the younger grades that stick with you your entire life. That's for sure.
See, I have a thing with it. I'll tell you a story for what it's worth. So I'm not a great fan of sports memorabilia.
Right.
Now, I say that because I work in sport. I've worked in sport my entire career, and so particularly when I was working in the United States and offices there, you'd receive so many things, just so many gifts from teams and all those sorts of things, and so it became a bit cluttery, bobbleheads, and it was amazing what all our staff would get gifts and all these sorts of things. We're very generous for all our clients, but I'd have this thing where I'd say, well, look, it got to a point where the office was so cluttered that I said, look, you can only have three pieces of memorabilia on your desk at any one time. Everything else you can put in the pool room. And they said, what do you mean by the pool room? So I had to explain what the castle was. And so we set aside a meeting room that became a shelf space for all this memorabilia, and people would put in there. They didn't lose it. They just had to store it and bring it out seasonally and things like that. And so the only thing that I kept in my office that was any form of memorabilia was the pennant. In the old days, you used to get a felt pennant. Yeah. And that was the Warilla Gorillas under-9 Premier's pennant. And that was the only thing I kept in my office with all these, sports coming through. And they'd look up and go, what's the Warilla Gorillas, man? What's all that about? It's a fond memory. So I'm like you. You've got a cricket ball, I've got a pennant.
Yeah. I remember I called my dad like this. It randomly came up a little while ago, like 2 years ago, about this. I remember I had this trophy, and I called my dad, and I was like, Dad, do you remember that cricketing trophy? And as soon as I said the word like cricketing trophy, I didn't even get the word trophy. I was like, yeah, I got it. Like he was really
Parents
proud.
Don't throw anything out. Yeah. Parents don't do that. That's a great thing about your parents. They keep everything. Unfortunately, it can be embarrassing.
That's right. Like that. In the NBA, the playoffs are happening right now. My team, the Dallas Mavericks, as you can see over my shoulder, weren't present because I don't want to talk about it too much on this podcast. Do you have a team in the playoffs that you're backing?
We have a bit of an affiliation with the Warriors, so I just love what they do. But look, frankly, the Knicks is who I'm sort of secretly rooting for. Having lived in New York and actively engaged in the New York versus Boston antics. So the Knicks are my team, and it's great to see them there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrific.
I'm upset with the Knicks because Jalen Brunson left the Mavericks and has just been so good, and we didn't re-sign him. Poor form from the front office of the Dallas Mavericks, but that's okay. I'll get over it eventually. There's a lot of talk at the moment about banning the charge. How do you feel about that sort of chatter at the moment? Because it's been such a pivotal thing in basketball for so long.
Well, look, there's a bit in it, and of course, this is like when the charge rule was introduced, they didn't account for the cunning antics of coaches and the athleticism of athletes who can put themselves into a position in an instant that creates the charge. So, look, I think as always, it's one of those things that's interpretative to an element. You could increase the charge circle, you could make it out to the keyway type of thing. That's one option, is to sort of take that out of play, but. Look, I think it is part and parcel of the game, and I don't think it's really impacted the NBL in that regard. It's always a bit of a debate, and of course, it seems that the referees always seem to favour the defender, not the attacker. But look, it's always a bit of a conversation. This what goes on this year. It'll be something else next year, but I'm sure there'll be a tweak here and there, and the refs will change their calls. The refs will adjust a little bit. I think that's the other element. The refs have to make an adjustment as well.
Yeah. Before we get into some NBL stuff, do you have a footy team? And when I say footy, I mean proper footy, not rugby. I mean AFL.
Do I have a footy team? Yeah, look, I guess the Swans. A bit of Sydney thing there, and they're our new neighbours where our offices are.
Yeah, that's right.
So look, I think the Swans. Yeah, definitely the Swans. Yeah. I've never really been a football lover. Never been sort of really, really hyper passionate about it, other than the Swans. If there was ever a moment to be hyper passionate, but I guess I go for that. And I just don't support anyone from Western Australia. That's my number one rule.
Classic New South Wales bandwagoner that just goes for a team that's going well at the time.
Of course. Giant Swans, wherever it is.
That's right.
But dude, the Swans weren't real great on the weekend. I saw Tom Harley today on my way to lunch.
Yeah.
And you had to give him a hug. I said, mate, you got to let it go. You just got to let that go.
So there's a lot of player movement at the moment in the NBL. So obviously you're a part of that because your involvement is in the front office side of things. So for guys like, I just want to get your take on, so guys like Luke Travers, for instance, who are really young and there's a lot of promise around them. How do you think this process would be going for them when there's so much on what it seems like on the line?
Well, look, it's been an interesting free agency. It seemed like everyone just dropped their bundle. It seemed like it almost felt like every player and every roster had almost been sort of allowed to go to the market type of thing. So it was really, there was a lot of bodies in motion, I must say, from our perspective. We of course, we went into free agency with a fairly stable situation other than Xavier, thankfully heading over to the NBA, which we're all massively happy about him. And it obviously creates a change of opportunity for us as well. So we're excited by that. But we had a pretty stable situation. We had to bed down our bench, and we did that pretty capably, I think. So we're really happy where we are there. Look, it's a tough one. With players like Luke, and there's a lot of players in motion. It was very interesting to see that the three sort of probably identified marquee players in free agency, that two of them returned to their own clubs, which is a pretty extraordinary circumstance, with Will and with Bulls staying where they were, where they stayed at home type of thing. And obviously the only change was with Keanu. So, I don't know. I can't speak for Luke and what he's trying to achieve, but clearly, obviously he has ambitions and wants to reconnect with the NBA, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
What's he looking for? Is he looking for role? Is he looking for responsibility? Is he looking to play in a winning program, or more importantly, is he looking to take a role in a program that may reflect what he'll be playing in the NBA if he gets a chance over there? So it's a tough one, and that's what agents do. That's the agent's job, is to guide these guys through this process and put them in the right place. And we certainly had conversations with Luke's agent about what he was looking for, and I don't think we were the right place for Luke. I don't think we were exactly the right fit, and and he's landed at United, and I'm sure that'll hopefully be the right position for him or the right location.
Yeah.
But he's got a hell of a job ahead of him right now. He's got to sort of reinvent himself a little bit, I think, and in a good way. And that's what change forces. We'll see what change does for him.
One of my favourite times in the NBA off season is free agency. There's so much drama, and to be honest, there's so many games. So you sort of get tired of watching. Well, not tired of watching basketball. You get tired of just results. You want some new stuff to happen. And I think that's why so many fans love free agency. When we watch it from afar, it looks like they're flying them in, they're all whining and dining these players. When they're trying to recruit them. Does any of that happen for you? Are you involved in that when players are on the market? Are you speaking with them directly? No. Do you have much involvement in that?
Not really, no. I've made contact with one player in this free agency period. He didn't return my call.
Oh, brutal. Maybe he thought it was a fake.
I for one. Maybe he did, but no, it was. I actually ruined this for myself. Look, it's very much the domain of. Generally, what happens is, and I'll generalise.
Of course.
There'll be of course, there's free agency, and then there's pre-agency, which precedes free agency. So, of course, we're running depth charts across the board. It's quite an involved process. Our modelling goes out 2 years, in fact, forward. So we're monitoring, obviously contracted players coming up for free agency, college are all key areas, and then a factor in imports as well. So you can imagine it's a pretty complex model at times, and as things start to fall, as players start to land and contract, that can tilt or change the whole model that we're constructing. Generally, it's a direct conversations between the agent and Chris Pongrass, our CEO, and that's an incredibly busy period for Chris through that period. A lot of conversations going on, a lot of tire kicking, a lot of gossip.
Yeah,
a lot of gossip. There's a lot of gossiping goes on. A lot of trying to find out where people are heading and so on and so forth. When the rubber starts to hit the road, generally then it becomes a conversation between it'd be Chris, Luke Longley, and coach. Would generally engage then. That's when the pitch goes. Sometimes we prepare a PowerPoint deck just to sort of visually step out where we're at. That's more the case with imports.
Yeah, right.
Aren't familiar with the country or the market or whatever. We include a lot of photos of Bondi Beach. As many photos as we can of good times for imports. Yep. But no, generally it's nothing glamorous. We don't get up on the G5 and fly somewhere and bring Tom Brady out or Buddy Franklin or anything like that. It doesn't work like that. It's a pretty low rent version of all that, really.
Microsoft PowerPoint. That's all you need. Right, make a slide
PowerPoint, but you know what? Mate. Honestly, it's pretty much it's a number.
Yeah.
It's a role. Who am I playing for? Who am I playing around?
Yeah.
And we have our pitch, and we think it works pretty well, and other clubs have their pitch as well. So we try to keep it pretty simple. We don't want to confuse players with too many moving parts. Yeah.
Talking about Xavier Cooks, you mentioned him before. How proud were you when you got to see him move over to the NBA?
Oh, I was very proud, very emotional. Xavier's from Wollongong. It's where I grew up. Gus, Gus Glover we have this 2500 club. We're all in it. So, I was very proud for him. Very happy for his family. His mum and dad are lovely, lovely people. His whole family are lovely, actually. His brother lives in the United States. His sister lives in Melbourne. They're very, very close. I had dinner with his mum and dad a couple of weeks ago. He'd been over there a few weeks by that stage, and I've had no contact with Xavier because he's got to get on and do his business. It's not for me to be fanboying around him. So I'll catch up with him, I'm sure, in a couple of weeks when he gets back here to have a bit of recovery. But very proud, just excited for him, and knowing that how much it means to him, and knowing truly the commitment he made to our club. What he brought to our club in the time that he was with us was immense, and it frustrated me a little bit in the finals, that bit of talk that was out there about he'd be checking out or he wouldn't be sort of putting in because looking after himself. It was harebrained stuff that people were spouting. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, especially
he's an absolute champion.
Yeah, when you know him personally and you see that stuff, it would be frustrating. So how do you walk that line then of being disappointed that he's no longer on your team? Like he was the MVP of the league. So as an owner, how do you go like, well, we want these guys to succeed and leave us? Because you're essentially wanting to be so good that they're going to leave, or I don't know. That's just an interesting balance.
Look, I don't know. Look, I came into this business without any basketball background per se, so I didn't have preconceived views of, what it should be or shouldn't be. I sort of play what's in front of me. And, I think at times there's a bit of a preoccupation in the league generally about long-term stability for players being around for a long time. I don't quite buy that. I describe the NBL as an intersection league. It's a league where people are going places.
Yeah.
They're coming back, they're going up, they want to go sideways. It's not a league where you get a lot of stability, and that's reflected in a few things. It's reflected in contract terms. Generally 1-2 years, opt-outs, options, all those sorts of things sit in there. No one's prepared to lay the numbers down for 7 years. And then on their back of that, we don't have a draft. We don't have play trades. So it drives that ongoing sort of fragility in the relationship, if you wish, or the fragility of the circumstances. So naturally, I think it's normal that players move around. And we've made it a bit of we stuck a stake in the ground 5 years ago and said, look, we're going to be a club that helps people get places. I think there was a huge upside in just being a club that's known to help players and everyone in the organisation move on to bigger and better things, whether that's within the NBL or if it's someone from the front office goes and works for the New South Wales Rugby League, great. That's a step forward for that person. So I don't dwell too much on that lack of continuity, because I think change is very important as well. And so it doesn't really worry me that much. Hey, it frees up a shitload of money that we're paying Xavier. So we got some money to play with right now, so don't worry about that. So you can take it that way if you wish. And so, and that's business. It's just business. And Xavier's moved on to a bigger and better opportunity, and, we couldn't be happier for him.
Speaking of money, sort of that list came out where each team's spend was released. As someone like it's confusing as someone who doesn't know the intricacies of how that all works. Are these numbers even accurate? Like, I don't know. I just feel like they're just numbers put together. I assume they're not. Obviously, I don't mean like in terms of accurate of how much is spent on that's listed there.
Yeah.
But I assume teams are actually spending more, right? Like through loopholes, and like it doesn't count under certain things. And
look, it's a bit of a dark art. I'd say notionally, the document or the reports that ESPN made by the Scoop, Olgan Ulich, the Olgs, they're there or thereabouts.
Yeah, right.
Everyone will say, "Oh, it's out by $1," or it's not that. Or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of variables in there. There's a lot of interest rates. Not interest rates. Excuse me. Particularly when you're dealing in because most imports are paid in US dollar net terms.
Yep.
Okay. So what that means is they negotiate generally a monthly or an annual salary. It's paid in US dollars net of tax. Okay.
Yep.
So the club pays the local taxes, income taxes, and then has to gross that out to US dollars from Aussie dollars. So there's always variables in exchanges. Some clubs hedge. There's all sorts of ins and outs that go on.
Yeah.
So they're not specifically accurate, but from a speculative perspective, they're there or thereabouts. It does raise the conversation as to why don't clubs publish? I don't know. We took the view, we've been always criticised at the Sydney Kings of buying championships and buying success. It can't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
It can't be further from the truth. And so we took the step last season, the previous season, so the year before, we took the step to publish one number. We published our luxury tax obligation.
Yep.
And it's at least one measure in the marketplace. I've noticed no other clubs publish that, but we're happy to publish our luxury tax commitment if it is one. And last year we didn't have one. We were under the cap, and then this year we were slightly over. But of course, in the model, there's all these exemptions around, Indigenous players and next stars and all sorts of things. So it's a complicated formula, and I don't think anyone really knows the direct answer. But as I said, the context is, I would say, that's there or thereabouts.
Yeah, it's at least a bar that you can sort of balance against other teams and stuff. All right, let's just talk about Perth, because obviously I was joking about, you don't want to talk to someone from Perth, so you're one of probably the more outspoken owners in the league. There's a few that like to talk. New Zealand's one. I used to work for the Perth Wildcats, and Troy Georgiou was CEO when I was there, and he was definitely not a talker. Like he used to hate us like being too vocal at anything. So what is it about Perth? Like, why do you hate Perth?
Oh, it's not. It's well, let's unpack that a little bit here. Yeah. So let's a couple of things. Well, Troy's a CEO. Okay.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
So yes. So, and that's no disrespect to Troy. I'm just saying that there's clearly, as employees of a club, they're quite limited to what an employee can say.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris Bongrass can't say the things I say, and I can't say the things Chris says, because we're coming at it from a different perspective. So certain liberties and opportunities are presented to you in an ownership role where you can articulate certain things, because you're not an employee of the club. You're paying the bills. So you have certain
what we want.
rights if your freedom of speech, so to speak. So to an extent, the ultimate arbiter is Larry, and sometimes he doesn't like what I say. So that's okay. So, and look, my outspokenness is nothing other than an effort to create interest and conversation and debate and reaction to what is required, what we need to do to build the Sydney Kings in the Sydney market. This is a crowded sporting market in Sydney. There's 23 professional sporting teams in Sydney. 23.
That's crazy.
So good luck. And you got 2 newspapers and 3 television stations and a pay TV network. So good luck trying to sort of generate any awareness if you're not prepared to put yourself out there. So and part of what I do is things I go out on a limb on are often to ensure that the players know that we've got their back.
Yeah,
we're there to defend them, and I can say things they can't say as well. So that's where I'm coming from on that. This alleged antipathy towards Perth is, it's nothing more than a saga. It's the book of wars that's been going on. It'll go on. It'll probably go on forever, long after I'm gone. I'm frankly concerned for the Wildcats personally. I think they're bordering on irrelevance, given they're in the West, and Sydney and the East Coast is now powering along in the world of basketball. I'm also concerned for the Wildcats. I think their fans are, that's a shrinking population base. It's hard to grow your fan base if your fans are all mad, rabid people. A lot of people won't come around to that party. They don't want to go to that show anymore. Right? So I'm just trying to throw out some lifelines to the Perth Wildcats and to help them as best I can. That's not often appreciated, but it's okay when you got 2 rings in 2 years. We're cool to sit back and relax and enjoy the ride. It's okay.
That's right. You could probably stop talking about the Wildcats once, if they haven't made the final or the playoffs for 2 seasons now. So, look, if they are irrelevant, then it'll become boring to talk about them. So, you could move on. You'll move on.
Right. Well, look, I'm sorry for them missing the playoffs twice in a row.
Yeah.
Great they made the play-ins, but they didn't make the playoffs.
No, it doesn't count.
I'm sorry for them for that. And, that's for a proud franchise. It's that's got to be a bitter pill to swallow. But, boy, they're spending some money. Hutchie's got the checkbook out. So it's I guess they're the favourites. I would imagine right now the bookies would have them as favourites for the championship.
Come on.
I think
you're just saying.
Seriously, mate. No, I'm not, mate. Seriously, the money they've spent, it's crazy. It's good. It's fantastic. And I'm cheering them. I think it's great. I think they're just – I love it because, we need that. We need that. We need someone to have a big go, and they're having a big go. It's expensive, but, look, SEN's got plenty of money. They'll be fine. They'll be okay.
You went through a process of taking over a team. So that was around, was it 2016-ish that you...
No, wait, which one?
The Sydney Kings.
The Kings? Well, we were approached by the then owners of the Kings in 2018.
2018.
To take on a 50% shareholding in the club.
Yep.
Which we did. And then the following year, after 1 year in that situation, we then came to a mutual agreement with the remaining 50% owners to buy. We'd buy their remaining 50%. So
yeah,
I became a full owner in 2019.
Right. So I'm just sort of comparing that to Jack Bendad. Obviously, had the club for a very long time. Did some amazing things for the sport as a whole and for the NBL.
Yeah.
And then obviously new ownership came along. So and they're having a tough time. So you went through this process yourself. Did you feel like this weight of responsibility, like, oh shit, like I better do this right because you got a lot of people that you could disappoint?
No, I didn't really. The club hadn't been going that well. It's not like we bought a club that had been rattling up championships left, right, and centre. The club had been performing pretty average, actually. In fact, below average. So, I didn't really. And again, I probably naively went into ownership of a team. As I said, naively. I didn't really have a lot of views. My strong sense was I wanted to do it my way.
Yeah.
I didn't come into this with a huge background in basketball or instinctive knowledge of the sport. I came into it I looked at it from a marketing and positioning and a people perspective.
Yeah.
And so what we embarked upon was an initial rebuild of parts of the business. And we then, the first decision I made, really the first meaningful decision I made as owner, was to hire Will Weaver into the role. And so that was roundly criticised. I was very surprised by the anger that was directed towards me as a result of that. People very critical of hiring an American coach, didn't like it. Hire Aussie. Americans don't know this market, don't know this league. They can't coach here.
Wow.
And I live by the mantra, I zig when everyone else zags. I'll go the other way. So, I think I didn't feel an obligation. And initially people were very cynical about my involvement. Of course, there's the darkest histories of this club involve firepower, and people, on social media said, it's another firepower. This guy can't survive. Yeah. They won't keep this thing going. And that stuff doesn't worry me. And in one of my messages I wrote to members when I first came on board, I just simply said, look, don't judge me by my words, judge me by my actions, and do that, please. And so I think the results speak for themselves now. So I'm not afraid to upset people. We upset people all the time in ownership because you can't please everyone.
No.
But you've got to have a vision. You've got to have a light on the hill. And honestly, all I wanted to do was win a championship. That's all I wanted to achieve. So it's so hard to do that. It's very, very hard. And I often say now, sort of jokingly, that if before we ever won a championship, I'd say, because we went so close on one occasion, I know how hard it is and the circumstances. And there's so many things can go wrong in the journey towards a championship. Injury, disruption, you name it. I think we've tasted it all. And I jokingly say that if you won the national championship in tiddlywinks, I'd kiss your feet. It's that hard to do.
Yeah.
So I have that much respect for anyone that can win a championship in this country, in a sport, in any sport. Hats off to them.
Yeah. 2020, you sort of just mentioned that. So that was obviously the COVID year when there was a grand final series against the Perth Wildcats. There was that was just a whole debacle, obviously. So the Wildcats were awarded the championship after the series couldn't finish. Can you remember much? Well, not remember. Can you talk a little bit about that sort of process for you?
It's not very cathartic to do so. I think about it a lot.
Right. You still think about it?
Yeah. It's a pebble in my shoe.
Yeah.
It'll never leave me, ever. Because on many reasons, but it's not about me personally, but the players. particularly. The players that were impacted, players that had never won a championship in their entire careers, who didn't get that thing, didn't get that moment to decide it. I think there was a lot of media written at that time. Some of it was very accurate and very true. It properly reflected on the circumstances. And, I'm not here today to cast judgment on anyone that was involved. A lot of people that were involved aren't involved in their respective clubs now, and in the organisation, interestingly. I'm not that I'm take comfort from that, but I've spent my entire career in sport, mate. I've worked in sport professionally since 1988. Most people weren't fucking born then. I've been around a long time in this industry.
I wasn't.
And that doesn't make me feel any better.
Sorry, I was 89. If that's any.
The thing, all I'll tell you is this: is that you when you've been around as long as I have, so that's 1988. I don't know what's that, 34 years, 36 years. I've worked professionally in sport, made a career out of it, my entire career. And sport moves very quickly. Moves very quickly at times, and sometimes you don't have the paperwork can't keep up with how fast things are moving, and things were moving very, very quickly in February and March of 2020. And the thing that I've worked all over the world in sport, and when you give your word, you tell the truth.
Yeah.
And that's it, and you don't change. And and that wasn't reciprocated in these circumstances. And so that's I have one gripe.
Yeah.
That people lied. People lied in that situation, denied conversations took place. And of course, we didn't have time for paperwork. We didn't have time for email exchange. This was moving so rapidly. It was a moment by moment, minute by minute scenario. And so my one gripe, as I reflect on it all, and is that my disappointment is that people did not tell the truth. And, that's the way things go. And it is what it is now. And, I don't begrudge the Wildcats claiming their Asterix championship. You can have it. But I do feel sadness for the people on our side of the equation that weren't given their fair opportunity and weren't treated fairly.
When you say we'll move on after this because I want to talk about 2021, 2022. Like things, the truth wasn't told. Do you mean from the league or from Perth?
Those that lied, no, they lied.
Right.
That's all I'll say.
Right. Okay.
And I'm standing here today, still in my role, still doing what I'm doing, and I'm telling the truth.
Sure. Okay. Well, on the flip side of that, 2021 happened, your first championship as the owner of the Kings. How good were the celebrations, especially off the back of that? Because that's like such a blow to then bounce back and win. It must be from the ultimate low to the ultimate high.
Yeah, well, we had a year in between where we had a very, we were climbing, that year, 2020, the 2020-21 season.
Yeah. Sorry, I get confused because they count it as 2020 and then 2021. And
then, that's right. Yeah. For simplicity, we'll say that with the 2020 finals were stopped.
Yep.
21 finals, we didn't even make them.
Yep.
We got caught in a real tough situation where Will Weaver got the opportunity to go and work in the NBA, and we were stranded without a coach. And again, I'm not critical of Will. That we stand by talk about keeping your word. I told him, I said, if you get an opportunity, I'll let you go, because that's what we stand for, letting people chase those opportunities. And he got an opportunity to put the club in a tough bind. But that's sport. Anything can drive that circumstance. And so, we hired 40, and 40 had his rookie year as a coach, and that was a tough year for us. A huge number of injuries.
Yeah. The
toll was immense. And so, we climbed out of that. We didn't even make the finals. We missed out by a whisker. There'd been a top 6, we would have been fine, but there wasn't. So there you go. So we roll on, and then we hired Chase Buford, and so rolling into the 22 season, 22 finals, mate, it was unbelievably tough start of the season. Like, I mean, frightening. I probably talk about it now. I did go to Chase's house after about, I think, 6 games, and I went to because I went and spoke to him. I said, very rarely do I do a house call, and
Right.
I went around. We met in his living room, and we had an honest conversation about what's going on, what's happening, and more importantly, how can we help? And he gave me some input into areas that he felt that he wasn't sort of getting a sufficient support in some areas, and or certain level of authority. We addressed that evening. Immediately, calls were made. Chris Pongrass was dispatched on a visit to someone else's house to talk to them.
Right.
And because you don't have time to waste, you've got to get on with it. It's moving fast, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that conversation triggered the turnaround, but it certainly gave us a chance to have a reset. And then things just started to click, and then, we just got on a roll. It was crazy, and everything that all the disasters and bad things that had been happening to us in the last couple of years prior, everything fell our way.
Yeah.
Everything fell our way. Jalen Adams started playing like a beast. We turned things around with that monster dunk he put on Brisbane. That changed the shape of the season.
Yeah.
And then it just all started rolling. The belief was unbelievable. And and again, rolling to that finals, it was that for my mind, the regret I have is we didn't play Illawarra in a grand final series. I thought that would have been an epic 5-gamer. It would have gone to 5 against Illawarra. It would have been a wild ride, but it didn't work out that way. We got them in 2. That was a great win down there in the semi-final. We really put them away. It was a huge win, and then we went into the finals, and then lo and behold, we couldn't believe it. Melbourne dropped the bundle and fell to Tasmania. And I think, I don't know who was more surprised, Tasmania or Victoria, or the Melbourne United guys who got there. So we found ourselves playing Tasmania, and look, it wasn't a fair fight. Honestly, it was. We were a runaway train that year. It was pretty frightening what we were doing, and we weren't. And that's not being boastful. That's just being real about. It was a pretty hard team to stop, and Tasmania made a great fist of it. But we just it was pretty hard to stop that team, and so in the end, it was almost like it was disbelief. Going back to the kissing people's feet if they win the Tiddlywinks Championship.
Yeah.
I was shocked by it, and it was an amazing run, and hiring guys like Ian Clark in, and just seeing players grow like Xavier. It just all happened. It was just one of those great moments, and the team was so bonded and so together, and it was just wonderful. It's heartwarming to think about it, But it was a bit of a parade we were putting on in the end. It was amazing. It's incredible.
Going into then this past season, trying to go back to back, you talk about how hard it is to win one. It's obviously incredibly hard to go back to back. I don't think I've had like I try to stay pretty neutral, especially like sort of doing the podcast, and I work in sports and stuff. So I try to stay pretty neutral, but I feel like I only had like one gripe with the Sydney Kings this season was that. And I'll just be frank, I felt like there was this like fake us against them thing that you guys were trying to push. That was like, nobody believes in us and everyone's against us. But like, I don't think that was that like a deliberate thing that you guys did to try and, like you said, get interest in the team, interest in the NBL? Like, how legitimately did you believe that people didn't think you guys were good enough to win?
Do you really think people don't hate the Sydney Kings?
I think people hate the Sydney Kings, but I think everyone knew you were the best. You lost like 6 games.
This year?
This year. But it was like this whole lead up, like,
Jose.
People don't think we're good enough to win.
Hang on. I woke up in the start of the season, and the Adelaide Warriors were the hot thing, and then Brisbane were the hottest ticket, and we were just like, we've had to wipe the roster. The overtime clowns are all shitting on us. We're rubbish, whatever. you hear all that stuff and you just go, all right, well, that's cool, whatever, And we were never uh, overtly confident at the start of the season. We're very respectful of a season start. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Look, it's a pretty shallow, squad you've got. A couple of injuries and sideways. Your season's over. That can happen. So we were never in that mode of saying, look, we've got this. They're all kidding themselves. But I won't say we weren't offended by it. There was a lot of disrespect. I think it was by promoting other teams and talking other teams up in the manner that they were. I think simply disrespected what we were doing.
Yeah.
So no, we were there was a genuine consciousness of that, and that only sort of rolled on further and further as the season went on. I think. And look, we know we're the biggest drawing team on away games in the league.
Right.
We know people come out to watch and hate the purple, and I love that. I'm okay with that. It's pay your money, you can have your go, but but be respectful. Be respectful of what we're doing, and people confuse there's a sense out there sometimes I get that we're arrogant. It's pride. People, please understand. There's no arrogance here, but we're the Sydney Kings. We're not going to be pushed around. We're not the Violet Crumbles, right? I do believe there's a sense in the league that they just prefer Sydney to go back to what it used to be. The team that couldn't make it could fake it but couldn't make it. Well, we don't fake it. We actually make it, and so that'll never change. And this is what you see is what you get now. And so, like it or not like it, it's okay. But at least there's a black hat out there somewhere to fight.
Yeah. A couple more things, and I'll let you go. And it's Monday night, and probably other things you want to be doing. That sort of touches on, I think, NBL media as a whole. Like, they're very, what I find is, you don't have to say this, but I find it's very insular, and they control a lot of what comes out. They write their articles, and they've got their podcast and their talk show or whatever. And so that basically almost whatever they say goes. If they're saying the Sydney Kings aren't good enough, then people just believe it because there's not enough coverage in the league. But that leads to a problem in that, certain writers are on payroll. So like they're employed by the league to write certain things. Yeah. Do you see that as as a problem, and how do you fix that?
Well, look, it's not peculiar to basketball.
Yeah.
All the major sports, the AFL have specialised in AFL media.
Yes.
If you talk, people I talk to in general media, get angry that the AFL drops its exclusives to itself. Right?
Yes.
So this is a function of the new regime of media coverage, of the fact that sport, generally speaking, media is a shrinking model, and traditional media, print is an example. There's a proliferation of radio, I think, but generally speaking, those very influential, very considered, very mainstream media platforms such as print is a dying breed in that regard. And they're all more and more focused on clicks and all sorts of things. They're not selling papers anymore. They're selling content. So it's a general malaise, and so I wouldn't isolate the NBL and say that that's a problem. But I will say this about basketball. One of my theories on the growth of or the current state of the NBL and the state in the last 10 years, and I constantly get this. Particularly in Sydney, the entertainment centre, the good old days, the 90s, it was never better. It was the greatest. Look, I get that. But in those days, there was no pay TV. There was no internet. You couldn't watch the NBA. You might get a snippet here or there. You might get the odd game. But, therefore, people had to focus on the game of basketball they could consume, and that was the NBL. Then the NBL, and therefore there was a lot of coverage around it, a lot of media. In those days, a lot of newspapers. There was a lot of paid journalists that did a lot of things. There was no podcasts. There was nothing like that. It was that was where people got their information from. So it's almost like a perfect storm where you had a changing media landscape, but also the NBL fell in a hole as a league in through that period, 2000s, wherever it was, before Larry sort of reinserted himself into the ownership of the league. It was a very low period, and that not only impacted, fan bases and things like that. It meant that there was less interest from journalists. So I believe that generations of journalists were lost, that they just stopped writing about basketball. Callers, a whole range of things happened that made the referees. I'm sure referees walked away from the league. They couldn't make a living. Administrators, bench officials. It really impacted the continuity of the knowledge and expertise associated with the game. And the exciting thing that's happening now is we are in a new media landscape, and of course the NBL's got to go out and says what it says, because it's got to drive some action and drive some interest. And there's people consuming that. But podcasts like this, as much as it goes against my principles to appear on a West Australian podcast, I'll do so. But I think you can. It's not fair to be, particularly critical of the NBL in isolation. Hey, don't worry. Liam Santamaria and I and Corey, I definitely have conversations with Liam. Corey won't come near me. He won't go near me. But Liam and I have at it. Don't worry. And I speak to the league officer. I don't like something. I'll let them know on Twitter and to their face. I'll tell them straight. Right? But I don't think it's peculiar to the NBL. I think it's a construct of the current nature and the way that sport is being marketed, promoted, and communicated. And it's certainly a sanitization. And I think to some extent, the NBL, if anything, skews to be less sanitary than other leagues. A lot of leagues don't want stuff written. They don't want certain things said and spoken about. They don't want controversy. At least the NBL is prepared to sort of let it fly a little bit and put some stuff up to see what happens. And I don't like sometimes some of it. I don't like it, but that's okay. They're doing their job, and if they're not writing about it, I don't know who else will.
Yeah, great.
So, that's where we are.
All right, I've got just a couple of listener questions, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, first one's from Jacko McDonald. He says, origins around the Hawaiian shirts, and do you have a favourite?
Okay, right. Okay, the Hawaiian shirts are not a thing for me, right? So what happened was, the origins of that is I don't really own colourful shirts, but I was in New Zealand. I was in Auckland once, and I went to a shop and I saw this really interesting shirt. I bought it. Anyway, put it away, and then Andrew Webster from the Sydney Morning Herald wanted to do a piece on me on a game day. So he said, I'll spend the day with you. So he met me at home, and we drove out to the arena and spent the day. And I just happened to throw this shirt on. It was a hot day. I put this shirt on.
You're feeling colourful.
They had a couple of photographs in the paper, and then suddenly it became a thing. And then, so in fairness, I don't look, that's me, black, right? Yeah. But I don't wear them any other occasions than in the arena. And then, and now they have become something that I wish it wasn't the case, but it is the case. I do have a favourite. Anything we win in, I'm very, very, very superstitious.
Really? Okay.
If we lose and I'm wearing something, shoes, socks, anything, it has to be washed several times before I wear it again on game day. But one of our sponsors, she came up to me. She sits near me at games, and she came up and she gave me this sort of paper sack. And I didn't know. She often brings me, baklava and things. And I opened it up, and there was all these colourful materials in there. I pulled it out, and there were 4 shirts, and they're unbelievable. They're the best things ever. One of them I won't wear because it's got a photo of me on it. But there's ones with Hoops Capital and Sydney Kings and all that sort of stuff. So that became they don't fit or anything like that. They were way too big, but I just go, look, I just wear them anyway. So,
great.
So that's the story there.
Good. That's good. This from Cooper Yates. How does it feel to construct a back-to-back championship team?
It's awesome.
Can you do it again?
Good. Well, you know what? Back-to-back's been done. 3-peats have been done. What about a 4-peat? Imagine that. Imagine a 4-peat.
Is that what you're going for, a 4-peat? I mean, you have to say you're going to try and win every year.
Every owner says they're going to win.
Yeah,
I had a conversation once with an owner, and he said, Smithy, we're going to win the championship this year. And I sort of stepped back and I said, are you real? This is in the off season.
Yeah.
I said, mate, look, congratulations, all the best. And it didn't happen. But no, it was great. Look, this year was incredible. I must say it was far more rewarding this year, this one, because of the back-to-back nature of it. But literally we were at various times through the season, we were at particular back end we were like hanging onto the glass with our nails. It was that we're just clawing on, holding on as hard as we could. It was a death ride at the end. It was breathtaking at the end. It was not like the previous one, which we were sort of just smashing everyone. This one was frightening. It was a hell of a ride, but it was great. It was amazing. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Paul. Well, thank you so much. I know it took every iota of your being to appear here.
No, that's all right.
Look, this is a basketball show. It's not the Perth Wildcat show. This is purely, last week we spoke to Ryan Brokoff. The week before we spoke to Shane Hill. So look, it's that's fine. So I really appreciate you giving up some time. Look, I'll say this. Good luck for this year.
Thank you.
Back to back. When you're in Perth, please wear that Hawaiian shirt with your face on it. Please.
All right. For you, I will, Dan. And when I get criticised, I'll say, blame him, don't blame me.
Very good. The BackChat Basketball Show is on Instagram, which is BackChat_basketball. You can send us an email, hello@backchatpodcast.com.au. Episodes come out every Wednesday. Next week, not sure who's going to be here, but I'm sure it'll be someone as good as Paul or better. Come on. And
not hard. That's not hard.
I will chat to you another time, and I'll see you in Perth.
All right. Good on you, mate. Thank you. Thanks, mate.